Once upon a time, there was a very beautiful girl called Chetachi. Chetachi lived in the village of Imbieri. She was very troublesome that most of the villagers named her Unsubu, which means trouble in the Igbo language. Chetachi did not have much friends and would always keep to herself. When she came across people, she would either look for their trouble or haul insults at them for no just cause. So everybody avoided Chetachi like a plague. This went on for years, and the time came for the girls of her age grade to get married. The young men in the village went out in search of a wife, and not long after, almost all the young girls in the village were engaged. A lot of marriage ceremonies took place, and this troubled Chetachi's mother, Azuka. Months passed, and not even one man graced their door to ask for Chetachi's hand in marriage until one fateful day. Chetachi and her mother Azuka were home when they heard a knock on the door. It was a young man named Chibweze. Chibweze was a fisherman, and he had heard a lot about Chetachi and picked great interest in her. His sisters, Uzoma and Nkoli, warned him about Chetachi and all her trouble, but their warnings fell on deaf ears as Chibweze had made up his mind to marry Chetachi. So he decided to visit their house to make his intention known. Chetachi's mother Azuka was shocked and couldn't believe that a man was standing at her door to ask for her daughter's hand in marriage. She welcomed him wholeheartedly and called Chetachi to come and welcome their guests. But Chetachi was furious on hearing that he was a fisherman. So she chased Chibweze away from her house and began to say, "Mama, how can I marry a fisherman? Me," said Chetachi in disgust as she rushed into her room, closing the door behind her. Her mother, Azuka, was in shock as she expected Chetachi to be happy that a man had come for her hand in marriage. She walked into Chetachi's room to talk to her, advising her never to look down on anybody, but to focus on the heart of the person instead. But Chetachi began to shout that nothing good can ever come out of a common fisherman, that he was a nobody without a future. Her mother tried to make her understand, but Cheta refused to listen to her mother. So her mother shook her head and left her room. Azuka wept as she did not know why her daughter was so troublesome and difficult. The next day, it was still early in the morning. Chetachi heard a knock on the door, and it was Chibweze. "You again," she exclaimed, as she began to rain insults at him. "You common fisherman, how would you ever think that I will marry you? Me? Do you think I want to be wretched like you?" Chetachi said as she pushed Chibweze out of her house and banged the door. Chibweze was very, very sad as he loved Cheta so very much, even though everyone, including his sisters, have warned him to keep away from Chetachi because of her trouble. However, Chibweze did not give up, but decided to shower Chetachi with so much kindness and love. He would always bring fish for Chetachi and her mother and also help them to harvest their crops from their farm. Most days, he would even fetch water from the stream for them. Chibweze did all that he could do to make Chetachi fall in love with him, but Chetachi was insistent on never falling in love with a poor fisherman. Many months passed, and Chibweze kept working hard to impress Chetachi and her mother until one day when they noticed that Chibueze had stopped coming around. Even Chetachi had noticed his abrupt absence, but she never bothered to find out why. After all, she never loved him, so she continued living her life. This made her mother sad, as she knew Chibueze had good intentions for her daughter. 1 year passed, and all the women of her age grade were already married, some even pregnant with children. And by this time, no one had come for Chetachi's hand in marriage. Chetachi thought that this would not bother her at all, but she found herself thinking about it lately, especially as the villagers started to gossip about her and laugh behind her back. One day, Chetachi was walking by the bush path which led to her farm when she saw a nice looking car approaching her. She was so happy because she was well dressed and looking so beautiful. This must be an outsider. I hope he notices me. She began to smile at the car as it came to a stop. To her greatest surprise, it was a very handsome man named Alozie. Cheta immediately fell in love with him because of the flashy car. Cheta and Alozie started seeing each other, and Alozie asked her to marry him. Without hesitation, Cheta agreed to marry Alozie. All this while, Cheta never bothered to find out things about Alozie. She was occupied by his car and his show of wealth. So the day came for their introduction, and Alozie and his people came to Cheta's house. She was so excited that she was finally getting married to a rich man when suddenly Cheta saw Chibueze. "What are you doing here? After all these years, you still have the guts to come here to disturb me, you wretched fisherman. Anyway, you are out of luck as I am getting married to a man that you can never be, not even in your next life." When Cheta finished talking, she noticed the silence everywhere. Then Alozie got up and told Cheta never to talk to his brother that way. That his brother Chibueze was the wealthy one amongst the both of them. Over a year ago, Chibueze got a big job that made him so much money that he used to build his house and buy all the cars, including the one Alozie was driving. Alozie was just showing off his brother's wealth in the village when Cheta saw him and fell in love with him. Alozie was so furious at Cheta's behavior that he cancelled the introduction and left with his brother Chibueze and their kinsmen. Cheta began to beg Chibueze and Alozie for forgiveness, but it was too late. The introduction was called off, and Cheta cried her eyes off. This experience taught her never to look down on anybody, and she also stopped looking for trouble in the village and turned a new leaf. The lesson to be learned from this story is that we should never be proud, never look down on anybody because they are poor, as no condition in this life is permanent. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It helps us grow our channel. I'll see you in our next story. Bye.